We often have situations where a client is being told they need to resign in order to accept what's called a compromise and release settlement. A compromise and release settlement is a type of settlement where the insurance company or the self-insured employer gives you, usually it's a one-time lump sum payment to buy out the entire liability for your case, meaning that would eliminate your right to continue to seek medical care through the workers' comp insurance. You'd be done, dead in the water, and you would be on your own, quite frankly, to treat your injuries and deal with any other possible benefits that you may have been entitled to under workers' compensation. And so oftentimes the idea of resignation comes up. And the reason for that is because generally when the insurance company is buying out your medical care, they don't want you to be a risk. And so when the insurance company is on the risk, meaning that they still insure the employer, that means that there's potential liability where if you go back to work, you may be injured again, which would then essentially make them liable for ongoing medical care. And so they're eliminating the financial risk that you accept a settlement, they paid you out for medical care, and then you'd go back to work, get hurt, and then they're responsible for paying for medical care all over again. So really, it's nothing to do with whether or not they like you. It has nothing to do generally with your employer. It's more so just the insurance company who's still insuring the employer, avoiding financial risk of having to administrate health care on a new case. Now, there's some situations where the resignation doesn't necessarily have any meat to it. Oftentimes we see the insurance companies and they say, well, I want that person gone to CNR. And my client will say, okay, fine, I'd rather take the money and be done with workers' comp. So they resign. Then the employer calls them immediately back and they're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, we love you, come back. The person goes back to work and then guess what? Insurance company can't do anything about it. And you'll often see the insurance companies want these resignations, but really there's no legal basis for them to tell you that you can't go back to work there. And ultimately there's no damages or things associated with it, which makes the whole point of that kind of silly. But more often than not, usually when people do resign, they don't go back to the same job. And usually it's for, the medical reasons. They just don't want to do that type of work anymore. They have different needs. Their family has different needs. They want to move, whatever the case may be. They kind of use their injury and their settlement as an opportunity to reinvent themselves and start down a new path in life. But it does come up, and ultimately, it's something you need to think a lot about. Resigning from your employment, especially if you can go back to work there, is a big deal, and it's not to be taken lightly. But nonetheless, there is no legal mechanism to force the insurance company to buy out your medical care. Compromise and release is a voluntary process. And so oftentimes it is a bargain for exchange where the insurance company is going to say, well, I can't make you resign from your employment, but you can't also force me to buy out your medical care. And so that if that's a decision you're being put in a position you have to think about, it's an important decision to make, and you should really give it a lot of thought. And quite frankly, you should consult with professionals if that is your situation.